And so when you mention somebody's name in the first line, the second word, they're going to be pulled in a little bit more because you just said their name. The way you want to think about pitches is you just want to win another 2 seconds. Give me another 2 seconds. Give me another 2 seconds. And then eventually you'll be at the end of my pitch and you're going to want me on your show.
Adrian Moreno is a successful hypnotherapist turned entrepreneur, building his business via the power of podcast pitching into a $250,000 success story in 18 months. With his unique storytelling approach, he captivates podcast hosts and their audiences so that they sign up for his free offers, followed by daily emails that make storytelling, or should we call it story selling, pay. Adrian is going to share how he does it without a PR agent, and now how he teaches other coaches, course creators, and authors like you and me to do the same thing. Welcome, Adrian.
Thanks a lot for having me. Thanks for the intro. That was fun.
Hello and welcome to the Write the Book Inside You podcast. Tips, tools, and interviews for coaches and healers like you who want to write a non-fiction book to boost your visibility, clients, and cash flow while making a difference. I'm your host, Carol Westmore, a multi-published author and energy psychology tapping book coach. Now let's jump into today's episode. Adrian, I've been following you for a while, and I want you to tell us the low moment in your life that became the why you believe in pitching podcasts.
It was one of those things where you kind of, they say, just jump into the water, start swimming, and you'll kind of get to where you're going. I never intended. I wasn't a passionate podcast guy. I wasn't passionate about like speaking so much or anything like that. I was just an entrepreneur trying to figure out how to grow my business after I lost everything, because I was a fitness coach back in 2018. I lost like 100 pounds. That became like my story that led to me creating a fitness program. After I made almost like $300,000 very, very early on in that business. But I ended up making a lot of bad financial decisions, and I ended up with like $3,000 to my name. It's like when you go a while in business without getting clients, it kind of ruins ruins your confidence a little bit. It makes you doubt yourself a lot. And so aside from drowning and, bills rising up and not getting clients, this low confidence made it very difficult to get clients as well, And so I got to a point where I was like, how about I just start fresh? Like, how about I start from scratch? One thing that I am really good at is hypnotherapy, because as I was a fitness coach, one of the things that I learned to help my clients get in shape was hypnosis. And so I was like, okay, so I have this skill. I can charge people to do hypnosis sessions and charge a lot of money for it. And hey, maybe I can grow this business. And so what I did was, I was still doing the same social media stuff, posting on social media, sending DMs, sending friend requests, making content, trying to get people on sales calls and close them. That was still what I was doing. And so one day I ended up getting a hypnosis client, and she loved my work so much that she asked me, Adrian, why don't you come into my community? I have a mastermind of a bunch of business owners, and you can come in and do a Zoom call for us and, probably take us through a cool hypnosis thing. I was like, sure, I can do that. And so I go on the call. There's maybe 13, 14 people on that call. I did my thing. And then after the call was over, I remember I was going downstairs. And as I was walking downstairs, my phone vibrated. And I reached in my pocket and I pulled it out, and then it vibrated again. And there was 2 messages from people who were just on that call who said, I loved what you did. That was awesome. How can I work with you? And I was like, here, you can book a call with me and we can talk about it here. And 3 people ended up reaching out over a 2-day period from that call. And all 3 of them all signed up. My price was $5,000 at the time, paying full. Every one of them paid in full. And so in a 2-day period, I made 15 grand from a 60-minute talk. And I am a strong believer that your life is not worth living if you don't pause and reflect on a lot of things. And so one of the things that I did was decide to pause and reflect on why this worked so well, because I never had three people buy from me that quickly and doing this thing. And so I was like, okay, I got to find out why that worked. And then all of a sudden, I got hit with like this epiphany moment of instead of marketing directly to my direct buyer, why don't I just find people that already have the trust of my direct buyers? And why don't I just get endorsed by them? Because if I can get endorsed by them to a group of people, then I can be able to get clients every single time I go speak. And I took that idea and I was like, well, podcasts are kind of like these little masterminds because there is a trusted leader, the host of the show, and there is an engaged audience, the listeners of the show. So if I can get booked on a podcast that has my listeners, even if it's only a few hundred or a few thousand people, then I can win over the respect and trust of that audience and I can get them onto my list. And so that became this overarching thing for me. And
Mm,
that's why I got pretty obsessed with podcast guesting. I just saw that, with it, I could actually reach a larger amount of engaged and targeted people with the same amount of energy or even less energy than if I would go out there and try to market to 100 people
mm.
one on one. And, once I just saw that, I just said, you know what, let me just start getting booked on podcasts. And that's kind of what led me into this area of pitching and getting booked on shows.
Thank you. And I think one of the things that you do well, that you talk about, not only in pitching a host, but later in appearing on the show, and that is storytelling. And I believe that it probably, and I might be wrong, came to you from maybe the Milton Erickson type of trance that he would put people into by telling a story in hypnosis. So there are not many people who pitching knowing that hypnotic way, but it's not always
Exactly.
going to come through in an email. So, what's your secret, the first secret that you want to tell my
Yes.
listeners to get on these podcasts? And then we'll talk about that a bit more when it comes to a story.
Absolutely. So as you can tell, I answered your first question with a story. Now your second question, I'm gonna do the same thing because you're exactly right. Stories, they create these pictures in our mind, and these pictures are what going to drive you to do things. And so stories, when you tell them, they put these images in people's minds. As somebody who is a podcast host, I used to be a podcast host to a show. I had a top show a while back, and I used to get a lot of pitches, and all these people would pitch me in the same exact way. And if you probably been pitched like this too. Hey, Adrian, my name is blank, and I am an expert at blank, and I do blank, and I have accomplished this, and this, and I feel like I can be a great fit for your show because I can talk about this.
Well,
It
I've written
sounds
a book. Sorry, I've written a book. Or I'm writing a book, and because my show is write the book inside you, they think, well, this is what I've done. Can I come on your show and talk about my book? Okay, carry on.
exactly right. Hey, I wrote a book, so let me go talk about my book on your show. And
Yeah.
now look, there's a few things
So
that
that's
are
the
wrong.
wrong. So
Yeah.
that's the wrong way to do it.
I'm about to flip it and
Sucks.
show them a better approach, but I just want to make sure that they understand there's a few things wrong with this. Number one is everybody pitches like this. And so since everybody pitches like this, you don't make any noise. Your pitch is seen as a template. And number two, there's only one thing that matters in marketing. There's only one rule in marketing that I do everything by, and that is nobody cares about you. People only care about what you can do for them. And my list, I know, like you open my emails every day. Probably because you have an idea that they may do something for you. You don't read them because you love me, maybe, but most likely it's because you know that they're going to do something for you. And so, whenever you pitch somebody talking about yourself and all your accolades and what you do, when you do that, it's going to turn them off because they're like, well, okay, that's cool, but what's in this for me?
Mm,
And so, the way that you want to and so the trick is to making sure that you appeal to their self-interest. And what do these people want? A podcast guest, they want more guests for I mean a podcast host, they want more guests for their shows, of course, so they can make more content, but they want to make more content that engages their listeners and makes them be seen as the expert in their field. And so I am going to make the pitch talking about how I can help them create an engaging episode for their audience, how I can help them deliver a wow moment for every single one of their listeners so that they are seen as a better host. And so that's kind of where you kind of want to think about your pitches, think about the interest that they want. So that's the first thing. Now the second thing is being different. The easiest way to be different is to don't do what everybody else is doing. And what everybody else does is they send email text based pitches.
Mm.
So what I like to do is say, screw it. I'd rather send a video. And then what's going to happen is number one, I guarantee you the amount of hosts that get video pitches is like 1 out of 20 podcast hosts you talk to. You
Mm.
ask 20 of them if they ever got a video, maybe one of them, if you're lucky, are going to say yes. Almost everybody responds back to my pitches saying, oh my God, I've never gotten this kind of pitch. This is the best kind of pitch I've ever gotten. Thank you so much for this video. But the trick is what you say in the video. Sending a video, number one, that will make you seem a lot different already off the bat, and they get a chance to see your personality, and they're gonna want to have you on. But what you say in that video is really the cream of the pot. What you say in that video. You don't want to just say the kind of pitch that I talked about. Once again, you want to appeal to them. So within the very first lines of my pitch, the second word out of my mouth is their name. And the reason why is because our favorite word in the language is our name. No matter what you're doing, if I say your name, you're going to stop and turn no matter what you're doing because that is that important. And so when you mention somebody's name in the first line, the second word, they're going to be pulled in a little bit more because you just said their name. The way you want to think about pitches is you just want to win another 2 seconds. Give me another 2 seconds. Give me another 2 seconds. And then eventually you'll be at the end of my pitch and you're going to want me on your show. And that's how you create the pitch. So the first line is you say their name right off the bat. Now you bought yourself another 2 seconds. And then the next part of the pitch is you find a way to appeal to their self-interest. Hey, I can help you do this. My thing can help you do this. And then you go into your story. There's a reason why you do what you do. And so what you want to do is you want to pull that story into your pitch, but don't talk about what you do. Talk about why you do what you do before you tell them what you do. And the reason is because you need to open somebody up to receive your message. And the easiest way to open somebody up is through a picture in their mind. Again, tell a story first, get them all opened up, and then you can tell them what you do and tell them why you'd be a great fit for their show. And that's only after give them a reason to keep watching your video and then tell a compelling enough story that gets them wanting to follow you even further. But one thing that's important to understand about stories here is I know somebody's going to sit here and think, well, I feel like my story behind what I do is not that interesting. I feel like it's like, Adrian, you have this really interesting story. You lost 100 pounds. You went through this, but like my story isn't that great. And to that, I say a quick story. There is somebody, okay, so there's a company called Schlitz Beer Company, right? Schlitz Beer. They're number one in the European market. And way back when in the 30s, they were trying to become number one in the American market. And so what they decided to do was they decided to hire the great advertising man named Claude Hopkins. And they said, Claude, come to our beer plant. Like, we'll walk you through our process and like how we make beer. So Claude goes to the beer plant. A representative walks Claude through the entire beer plant and shows him how beer is made. Claude Hopkins, who has never seen such a thing, is mind blown. He's like, oh my God, this is a state-of-the-art machinery. This is how you're making beer. Why don't you talk about this in your marketing? Why don't you tell this story in your marketing? And they go, well, it's not unique. Whoever makes a beer exactly like this. And then Claude Hopkins goes, well, if you look in the market, nobody's telling that story. Everybody's saying our beer is pure, pure, pure. He goes, but nobody has illustrated what pure means. So why don't we start telling your market every single step that the beer goes through to become pure? And they did that within 6 months. They were the top selling brand in America. And still to this day, they're one of the top selling brands. And their campaign still to this day rides off of the back of that story. And so I tell you that story because it highlights a principle. The only thing is, it's not all stories are told. So the moment that you begin telling a story, you by default, you become more interested. And so that's why your pitch should be very story based. Just like all of my emails are 80% story, your pitch should also be 80% story as well.
How do you present that video? Is it a link, or do you actually
Okay.
put it in an email? That's quite
Yeah.
important.
Great question. So the first part of the pitch is the email itself. Now, the goal of this email is not to get them to say, yes, I want you on my show. The goal of this email is to get them to click a link. And that link is a Loom link, like the Loom.
Okay, you do that with Loom.
I
Okay.
would go on Loom. I shoot the video, camera only, shoot the video. I cut it if I need to cut it at all. So it's very short. And then I just copy and paste that link. I say, hey, I came across your show here. Here's a link. I got a video explaining why I'd be a great fit for your show. They click that link and then the video pops up and boom.
Okay, yeah. So
Video is what gets them to say yes. Assuming you have the show.
yes, and it's a very quick way to do it. And then at the end, you said, I think you have a way, the call to
now
action.
for a word from our episode sponsor. Every writer has faced the dreaded writer's block. But what if you had not just one, but 7 ways to shatter it? Introducing Bust Writer's Block Forever, 7 game-changing ways to kiss writer's block goodbye and unleash creative inspiration. Dive deep into transformative processes, the work of Byron Katie, Havening, EFT tapping, the journey, the alter ego effect for writers, internal family systems. And as a special treat, a bonus chapter on collaborating, even dancing with ChatGPT, your new creative catalyst. For those who've been inspired by The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, this book and accompanying video course at bustwritersblock.com will feel like coming home. Dive in at bustwritersblock.com. Now back to today's episode.
Out of all the podcast interviews I've done, I've accounted for maybe $213,000 that came directly from the hundreds of interviews I've done. Now, the podcast itself didn't result in the revenue. What resulted in the revenue was a listener listening to the podcast and then joining my email list and then buying from me on the back end. So the secrets of turning podcast interviews to evergreen marketing funnels is to give them a call to action at the end that's going to drive them to your email list. Now, email, I don't care how old you think it is, there's a reason why it's still around, because it is the dominating marketing channel you will ever come across. And so you want to make sure you have an email funnel set up so you can actually turn the listeners into buyers. And so the way that you do that is at the end of each interview, you're going to notice that most podcast hosts, 9 out of 10, are going to ask you, hey, great job, Adrian. I'm sure the audience loves you and wants to follow more. And so if somebody wanted to follow you, what would be the link? I mean, where would they go? The big mistake that most people make at this point is they give them every possible way to reach out to them. They say, well, you can go to my website, adrianmoreno.co. You can go on Facebook, look me up. You can go on my Instagram. Here's my handle. You can find me on Twitter. Here's my handle. They list out every possible way to reach out to you. And apparently they don't understand human nature, because human nature is very simple. If we get presented with too many options, we simply don't choose. And this is why restaurants that have 6 options on the menu typically do better. And so the goal is to not give them every way to reach out to you. It's to give them the most effective way to get into your world where you can sell them. And again, the most effective way to do that is not by sending them to your social media account, because you don't get their data, you don't get their information, but send them to a lead magnet. And so, for example, if I do a show talking about, like when I used to do a bunch of interviews on hypnosis and stuff like that, at the end of the interview, I had a self-hypnosis technique that I could teach you. And if you want to learn that technique, go to www.thiswebsite.com, give me your email, and then check your
Yes.
email account, and then you'll see it. And so that's what you want to do, is you want to make sure that you have a lead magnet that is, and not just one of those lead magnets that just like, oh, I got a free PDF or free this. Like, make sure it's something very useful, and
Mm.
then give it away on the back end. A really good a rule of thumb for lead magnets is I like to find what people charge for and then give that away for free, because
Mm.
it's going to make more people want to get it, right? And so
Well,
making sure that you have some kind of opt-in
so
funnel
I was
on the
going to say,
back.
talking of which, even though we're not going to leave it till the end, tell us now, what free gift do you have? And I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So if you want to get onto, if you want to learn more about me, right, and then jump onto my list and see this email marketing in action, just go to thepowerpitch.co/1600, the number 1600, and that's going to take you to a page where you can download a big list of I think it's 1,623 podcasts with hosts' information that you can, their direct contact info, so you can just reach out to them. We got, in all kinds of industries, marketing, sales,
Mm.
relationships, spirituality, health and fitness, vegan, parenting, whatever kind of niche you can think of. I got a bunch of shows
That
already lined.
sounds that sounds
So
great. So it's all done for you by signing up for that PDF. I want to just move into something which relates to your hypnotherapy and is close to my heart, and that is changing people's beliefs that they're even worth pitching. As a child, I believe you've had to overcome something in your own belief about being a speaker. Tell us about
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. So I don't know if you can tell by now. If you can't, you're probably super nice, or you're just not paying attention. But I have two speech impediments. I can't say my R's right, or I can't say my S's right. My R's sound like W sometimes. I got really good at them. Don't get me wrong, but I still
No,
have that.
we don't notice it. It's a story that appeals to people to learn that you don't have to be so confident in the beginning.
Exactly. Like, and so I grew up always wanting to, like, I just never really talked a lot because of that. And then now you can't get me to shut up, right? But one day I wanted to use, I learned a lot about hypnosis, and I was like, okay, well, I would like to use hypnosis on myself, to see if I can and this was before I actually became a hypnotist. This was like when I just learned it. I wasn't doing it with clients, but I was like, I think I can like try to do something on myself. And so one of the things that my hypnosis technique was, when I use, and I just want to be very clear, I don't do hypnosis work anymore. Like, I don't do clients in that, I don't accept clients in that realm. But my hypnosis technique that I did used to have, it would allow you to revisit past memories, so
Mm,
you can see where a potential situation could have started.
yeah.
And so I was doing this process, and then I found myself in a memory where I was about 5 years old, sitting across from a group of friends at a cafeteria table, and I raised my hand to tell my teacher that I was thirsty. And when I said that, it came out like dusty. I'm thirsty, like a U. And then whenever I said that, I had like three kids at the table started laughing at me and making fun of the way I said
Mm,
thirsty. And before I knew it, I had like half the table laughing at me. And in that moment, I did what all of us do. And that is, we look at an event and then we make it mean something.
mm,
And so at the time, I looked at the event and I was like, okay, this must mean that something is wrong with me, because I can't speak like other people. And
mm,
this must mean that I'm different than everybody else. And then this belief stuck with me as I grew up. And basically during this self-hypnosis session, you can, and you don't need hypnosis to change your beliefs. You don't. You just need to do different things.
yeah. Well,
But
look, I'll be honest, what I do with EFT and matrix re-imprinting, and maybe a lot of my listeners, we do re-imprint a painful memory. And there is a
yeah,
kind of hypnotic thing when you do tapping with someone, you actually are tapping into the body's memory. So
body's memory.
I
Exactly.
think our listeners do know how to, that you can reframe and re-imprint
Yeah, you can
past
absolutely
memory.
reframe.
And
It's
that's
like,
what's wonderful, is that you seem to have done it and gone from
yeah.
strength to strength. In your adult years, you went back, reparented that child, and told it what? That
Yeah,
people.
basically what I said was, you don't, you don't have this list because something is wrong with you. You can't talk right because something is wrong with you. You're just so damn unique that God had to make sure that nobody forgot about you. And so
Yeah.
you just sound a little bit different now, but nobody will ever forget about you. And in that moment, it just changed everything for me. I was like, wow, like I just started owning this, and then I started speaking. I make income through speaking. Like next week, I got a speaking event that I get paid for, and now I'm on podcasts all the time. And so, yeah, it definitely, was pretty impactful, and that's also a big thing. That's also a big reason why I do what I do. Is it's all about belief changing at the end of the day. Because to get somebody to buy your stuff, you have to get them to believe new things. And the way that you do that is not by telling them your beliefs, but it's by telling stories that have beliefs embedded in them. And so when you tell them the story, just by hearing it, they start believing what you want them to believe. And they're going to move forward to work with you. And so it's all about selling is nothing more than transferring your belief over to somebody else's mind so that they move forward to buy with you. And
Mm,
still the way to do
I
that.
like that. And
Yeah.
there is going to be the question, obviously we have some stories that we're living and have lived, but where do you find stories to put into your daily emails? I'm sure
Yes.
it's like people say to authors, where do you get the idea for your book? And I know you've probably been asked it over and over, but I think you may have a tip to share about
Yeah,
finding
absolutely,
stories.
absolutely. So again, watch. I just want people to also see I'm doing what I teach in the way that I'm telling stories every single time you ask me a question. So, quick story. There's a movie called Vengeance by BJ Novak. And BJ Novak plays this journalist who's trying to create a podcast about some girl who got murdered. And this girl was supposedly was a woman that he had like a one night stand with, and he started getting all into the story and to do this podcast interview. I mean, to do this whole podcast on trying to solve who murdered the girl. And in this movie, he meets Ashton Kutcher, the actor Ashton Kutcher, and Ashton Kutcher plays some like songwriter who's able to help people pull out their voice and write great music. And so BJ Novak goes up to him and says, "If I came to you for advice on how to find my voice, what would you tell me?" And then Ashton Kutcher goes, "Well, you see, there's no such," he goes, like, "you already have your voice. There's no such thing as finding it or creating it." He goes, "All you have to do is look at what's happening in the world around you and translate it in your own words. And that's your voice." And so, in the same exact way, the way I come up with emails is I look around me. I look around at what's happening in my world and the world. And then I just transfer it over to my list. I explain it in my own words. That's it. And so on a daily basis, I look at little events that happen in my life.
Mm.
For example, this morning I woke up at 8 a.m. and I already made $600 in sales from people buying my courses. And so what did I do? I wrote an email that said $600 wake up call. And it talked about how, hey, I woke up today with $600 in new sales. And guess what? I did this with an email. And I can show you how to write emails like this too. That's a little story. And that story highlights the belief that email marketing still works.
Yeah.
And so that's the way that you want to think about it. And so, like, just from things that happen to my day to day life, and this is also what I want people to think about. If you live the life that your buyers want to have, you need to share your data. You need to share what's
Mm.
going on in your life. I know for a fact my audience, they want a life to where they don't have a lot of things on their calendar, but they still make good money. That's my life today. So I talk about it as a story, and then they're gonna want to be like me, and they're gonna want to buy my stuff. Another thing is I watch, so every single day I stop. This is like typically when I stop working. I go to the gym, I work out, and then I spend the rest of my night watching movies,
Mm.
watching movies or documentaries. And the reason why is because movies and documentaries are great stories.
Yeah.
I can find a lot of my emails are about movies. So I write a whole bunch of emails about movies that I've seen because these movies, they can have stories that highlight my that highlight the point that I want to make too.
Yes.
So documentaries, books, Facebook posts. If I see somebody make a Facebook post that says, here's what I would do if I had to make $10,000 in 30 days. For example, I saw somebody make that post the other day, and I was like, what would I do if I wanted to make $10,000 in 30 days? Let me just write, hey, so I just saw this guy write this post that said this, and it got me thinking, and I thought, why not just share it with you? That's a story right there.
Yeah.
One more thing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Now, I was just going to say, do you have a collection? Do you collect it in a journal or on a
Yes. And so I basically,
notebook?
so I every single day I come across stories every day that I want to write about. And here's also, before I talk about the journal or like where I store them, you have to have the belief, period, that stories are everywhere to write about. You gotta be a journalist, right? You gotta have that belief. If you don't have that belief, you're not gonna do it, period. And so just make sure you understand they're everywhere. But the way that I do it is anytime I have an idea, I just open up my apps, my notes app on my phone, and then I'll show you this. You can see this, but basically it just says email ideas at the top. And
Yeah.
anytime I get an idea, I just come in here and I write it, and
Yeah.
then
I
I go
have
to my
people do
idea
that.
folder. I go to my idea folder and then I write. But I want people to understand something real quick is that you don't need interesting stories to write about. Keep in mind, even the most mundane stories can create for very, very successful marketing campaigns, right? Like one of my most successful emails was about how I spent 20 minutes going from puddle to puddle in my backyard, saving all these roly-polies because I found out that roly-polies, they can breathe underwater for 5 minutes, but no longer than that. And most roly-polies typically die when they go in water. And so I was like, oh my God, not on my watch. And hey, this reminded me of how I save business owners from drowning because they don't know how to market. Just like I saved these roly-polies from drowning, I can save you from drowning and failure. And so like you can literally, no matter what it is, you can turn it
Yeah, I
into
love that. I love that. I think that will give people confidence. But to go back to how can a person know that they will have the voice to carry through a podcast? I think the answer would be, and I've found that our early podcasts aren't great, but as we do practice and practice and practice and go on more podcasts and just put up with whatever, sometimes we don't do it perfectly. In the end, we start to win. Do you agree? And
I agree.
from being on, say, you say 15 to 20 podcasts, I've heard you say, you then can up level to some of the bigger podcasts. You don't have to go for, Jay Shetty or Tim Ferriss's or podcast from the start.
For me, it's like if you're gonna pitch bigger shows right out of the gate, you need to have a name already. And if you don't have a name already, get those small wins under your belt. Those small, oh, okay, like people want me on their shows. It's gonna build your confidence, and then yes, you can use that for bigger shows. You can pitch a big show, and they'll be like, oh, well, hey, he's done 100 interviews, or he's done 20, 50 interviews. He must be somebody, so let's get him on the show. And so
Yeah,
that's that.
I like the fact also, and that's why I've done video and audio from the beginning with my show, is that when people like I Google you and Google puts up the video shows you've been on.
Exactly.
Or you can put in podcasts, but you'll see the videos. So, it's just a matter of getting your list, and then we're going to come to the end now. Remind everyone where they can get a free list of over 1,600 worthwhile podcasts to go on. And I hope you're going to add mine there.
Yes.
For people who've written a non-fiction book. I don't do fiction. And tell us again, please, and I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, for sure. You can go to thepowerpitch.co/1600. And whenever you join my list, you won't only get that list of shows, but you're also going to learn how to do email by just reading my emails on their own. So around. I definitely am aggressive. I email every day of my life, but for very good reason. They teach a lot and they work very well.
Yeah. And for those people interested in learning how to pitch podcasts, the Adrian Moreno way, I'll put that in the show notes, the link in the show notes. Thank you. Thank you for being my guest today. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining me on today's podcast. Want a free gift to inspire you further on your book writing adventure? My free checklist, 5 book hook tips to kickstart your book writing journey, will help you get clarity on the key essentials to make your book a winner. Download it at writethebookinsideyou.com/free gift. The links are in the show notes. Until next time, a big virtual hug and keep writing. Thanks for joining me on today's podcast. Want a free gift to inspire you further on your book writing adventure? My free checklist, 5 book hook tips to kickstart your book writing journey, will help you get clarity on the key essentials to make your book a winner. Download it at writethebookinsideyou.com/free gift. The links are in the show notes. Until next time, a big virtual hug and keep writing.